2017, the UN concluded that we can emit at most 420 gigatons of CO2 in this century before we're seeing irreversible effects of climate change. A year later, we had used up a fifth of that quota, and this is the argument Greta Thunberg made last week at the UN Climate Conference. We think that our air is getting more warm and more poisonous. We think that the food we eat is getting scarcer as more species have gone extinct in this century than in the previous millennium, as best scientists can figure. We think that the current solutions to climate change look like two main things. First, they are attempts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, things like CO2 and methane, by limiting the amount that we use in energy production, and second, to also reduce the amount of toxic particulate emissions that kill people in places like Shanghai, where air pollution is incredibly bad. And there are hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidies and economic incentives across the world, for example, carbon taxes in places like Canada, that incentivize companies and energy sectors to do this. But they are failing, and that's going to be the first part of the speech, right after the bubble. We think that largely this is because there's a tragedy of the commons, and the second, there are any economic harms to these things, they become politically unpopular. So what do we advocate instead, and what is wrong? We think first, we are advocating for literally building seawalls and literally building hurricane shelters so that people are actually safe today because the effects of climate change are happening now. The most marginal populations do not have time to wait for us to figure out how we can mitigate climate change because they are seeing the effects right now. And second, we also think that we should invest and put hundreds of billions of dollars of subsidies instead of in solar panels, in moonshot projects, things like geoengineering, research and implementation, things like putting particulates in the atmosphere that reflect sunlight back. Note that this stuff irreversibly will affect the climate. It will maybe kill birds who live in the upper atmosphere because we don't know if it's good for them or not. When you put iron in the ocean, we have no clue what effect that will have on local ecosystems. But we think that is better than the harm we do know, which is that thousands of species are going extinct today and is putting all of humanity at risk. Cool. So that said, I'm going to be giving you 2 points of material in speech. First, why this is more likely to work and why solving climate change is so critical. And second, why this is also principally just because we cannot wait to figure out how we mitigate climate change when we know how to actually protect people now. So first, why is this more likely to work? I think the first thing to note is why current solutions have failed. First, because there's a tragedy of the commons. That is to say, China will not reduce their emissions because they are scared that the US will simply become a freeloader off of the benefits from that. So that is to say, this is why the Paris conference collapsed in part, because each country was worried that other countries would do their fair share. On our side, on the other hand, we think it is more cost effective. Like if the US alone builds seawalls, they don't need China to help. If the US alone has particulates in the sky, that has more of a chance of working without any other country's help, because it has a global effect, and also you can protect your own particular population. But second, we think it is also technologically feasible. We just do not know how to produce solar panels or wind turbines cost effectively enough to make them actually competitive with fossil fuels. On the other hand, things like putting iron in the ocean is incredibly simple. You literally just mine iron and dump it in the ocean. And it means that the amount of acidification that goes in there is reduced because the iron takes up some of the carbon dioxide. We think that we know how to put particulates in the sky. You literally just take a particular compound and dump it from a plane. So we think that this is more likely to work quickly. But third, we think it is also politically palatable because this stuff creates jobs without disrupting incredibly lucrative industries. So for example, like in the United States, whenever growth tanks, we see that the number of people who believe in climate change actually decreases because it's no longer in their interest to do so. We think that people are more likely to vote for things, and people are more likely to be supportive of things like seawalls, right, where they literally are clear, tangible jobs, especially for lower skilled workers who are likely when you build these things. But last and most importantly, this does not have a disproportionate effect on developing countries. The current paradigm in climate science is that we should change the amount of the kinds of energy which we're using. But that requires that developing countries who need to rapidly expand their energy grids use more and more expensive alternatives, things like green technology instead of coal. And we think that they're very unlikely to adopt these kinds of technologies because their primary objective, which we think is pretty reasonable, is economic development and growth. So people have access to things like clean water, people have access to infrastructure. I'll take that.
On your side, why do rich European states build seawalls in Bangladesh?
They won't necessarily, but we think that the current solutions are literally not working at all. Additionally, we think that there are spillover benefits when rich European states do things like put iron in the ocean because everyone is harmed if the ocean becomes acidic. All the plants die and there's literally not enough oxygen. So why does this matter? I think the impacts of climate change are pretty clear. The UN has projected that 350 million people will die just from sea levels rising alone. We think that Jakarta is literally sinking We think that people are already harmed, for example, by extreme weather events like Hurricane Harvey, where literally thousands of people lost their homes. We think that the most marginalized individuals who have the least capacity to move around the country and adapt to this are the ones who are most likely to be harmed. We think that if you massively invest money and time into helping people adapt to this, we're going to have a better chance. The second argument, however, is a principle. Even if the op-ed can somehow prove that current solutions will work, they will take time. It has been 30 years at least, since actually probably more like 50, since we realized that climate change was a threat, and we have made almost no progress. And as we figure out how to mitigate climate change, I think people are done. I think that people are harmed by extreme weather events. I think that as sea levels rise, people lying on outlying coastal regions are likely to see their homes and livelihoods destroyed. We think that the people who can wait around for a solution and who can adapt to this by themselves are likely to be more privileged to begin with. That is to say, it is unjust and wrong that poor individuals, especially in developing regions of the world, in places like Côte d'Ivoire, will have to bear the brunt of the inaction of the rest of the world. We think that you need to act fast, and on our side, you are much more likely to be able to act quickly. Why is this the case? I've already given you some reasons for this, but mainly because the technology already exists. Like on their side of the house, they need to figure out how to either remove carbon from the sky, which is incredibly energy intensive, or how to fundamentally change the way that energy grids across the entire world work. On our side of the house, it is relatively easy to change the way that the climate is changing. You can't stop it. You're going to see species die in the ocean, you're going to see birds die in the air if you put particulates or iron in either place. But you do know how to at least adapt to it, right? We think this is a much better solution because you can act faster. We think that the most marginalized individuals are likely to have more of a shot of surviving the upheaval that is to come. That's not very practical, guys.
Thank you, speaker, for their remarks. And I have the first speaker for opening opposition to open the case for their here.
Good. Let me be very clear with the opposition. We are not defending the status quo because the status quo has been entirely characterized by inaction and ineptitude and an absolute lack of willing to do anything for the planet. They want to talk about Canada's carbon tax, the only Canadian team in this room, when Justin Trudeau in 2015 advocated that he would do something about the planet and then did literally nothing for most of his term, right? The reality is most governments are doing nothing at all. So what we suggest the alternative is on opening opposition is that we suggest that governments should, and we should start lobbying governments to, one, start aggressively to no end taxing oil companies to the point at which they either shut down or stop being as aggressively horrible to the planet. We suggest that, okay, we'll do the Bernie thing of throwing a bunch of people in prison for the crimes that they've committed to the environment. We suggest that we'll start aggressively trying to change institutional economic systems as they currently exist. The reason we are going to do this is very simple, is because they will start citing UN sources. I can do the same thing. The UN wrote last year that the only thing that will stop the climate from being destroyed is a fundamental shift in our economic system. We think that is what is required, and that is what we are going to take on opening opposition. I would further like to add that they are just wrong about what the scientific consensus is about the planet. The reality is that the scientific consensus is that we are never going to be able to get back to a situation prior to humans having been on the Earth and what the environment was like then. But it is still perfectly possible to change institutions in a way that we are still able to create a perfectly hospitable planet. Panel, 71% of all carbon emissions come from 100 corporations. We know what the problem is. We can attack it. So, one point of change before going into the material. They say that their side is going to have a lot more political advocacy. What? This is just no reason to believe that their side is going to have much more power, right? There's a bunch of they're going to take a bunch of fucking planes, drop them over the ocean, drop some shit in there. Maybe it'll kill all the fish in there. We really don't know. Probably it's going to be effective. We suggest that on our side, you're able to get a much more politically palatable movement, insofar as you're a lot more laser focused on what kinds of issues that you want to be able to get changed. You can have people advocate for those particular positions, as opposed to a massive amount of infighting about what kinds of climate technology should be created. Moreover, I suggest that their side is just never going to get the development of the technologies that they want. In large part because major multinational corporations have holdings in developing states and have factories in there. They're never going, and also they have massive control over local governments. That means that they're never going to start creating the products that are responsible for their demise. We suggest that you can have international law be a lot more binding in these circumstances in order to attack this. So, why is attacking absolutely not an acceptable alternative? It is in large part because the current amount of pollution that we emit is going up, and there's nothing that is stopping the companies who do this pollution from changing. Why? Because in capitalism, it is considered an external harm to pollute. That is to say, it is considered something that you can just do because it doesn't affect you personally for having done this pollution. That means it never enters into their calculus to be able to do this. Notably, what this means is that it is a systemic failing as to why it is that this kind of pollution is always going to happen. So, in the world in which we get all of the best case examples, right? We start dumping shit in the ocean, everybody's wearing gas masks, that way they can filter in clean air, we've done all the nonsense that they want to do. The reality is that the structures of global economics are still set up in a way wherein all major institutions are absolutely still incentivized to pollute as much as possible because it is within their own rational self-interest to be able to do it, because those structures have yet to be attacked. That means that on their side of this debate, you actually don't fix the climate crisis. Why? One, because the research and development to even get the technologies that they want to do often takes an incredibly long time. Why? Because you have to ensure that these products are safe, you have to ensure they are effective, and also you have to ensure that they are, in many circumstances, usable to populations. So, what that means is that you often spend billions of dollars in research and development, wait about 15 to 25 years before those products are even able to be sold on open markets, at which point, the problem that you have already tried to identify and solve has gotten substantially worse, meaning that the solution in many circumstances isn't effective to be able to meet those gaps. Even if it is effective to meet those gaps, though, we suggest that to allocate resources in this circumstance often means funding the technology that they suggest. This means two things, though. One, it means that those kinds of institutions still rely on a profit incentive. That is to say, they're only going to sell these two regions where they're going to make money to be able to do it. They're only going to sell it at a price point that actually capitalizes them in their ability to do so. At that point, it means that this is something that is not going to be accessible to most of the world. What that means is that in developing countries where pollution is at its worst, most people aren't going to be able to get access to the resources that are going to be requisite in saving their own lives. We suggest that on our side of the debate, when you are able to start attacking some social institutions, and I'll explain why that's able to happen on our side of this debate, but notice that the impact here is that being able to stop pollution from happening in the first place does have international effects independent of where it happens. So, I'd like to talk about, before I say repeat what I'm saying, about why this is able to bring focus to movements and why that's important. It is because on our side of this debate, you are able to point to specific laws, specific politicians, specific companies, and specific issues that are being attacked. You are able to start creating policy platforms, and you are able to ensure that those things can be dealt with. This is incredibly important, because having a narrative about a particular solution that we know will be effective is in many circumstances how people start feeling like they can join movements and feel like their actions and time that they're going to be invested towards saving the planet is in any way effectual, right? We suggest that on their side of this debate, it is unclear to what extent going, oh, please, Daddy Elon, create me something. It's going to be a rallying cry for masses to start trying to lobby for something, because at that point it is a nebulous outcome that they're not sure what they're going to feel the effects of. Closing.
Yeah, so when you make new cars, are they immediately safe and accessible for everyone?
No, and we suggest that that's a bad thing, right? Like, we suggest that it's a bad thing. That, like, the analysis here is that, like, the tech isn't going to be safe and good in the first place, and that's harm for your side, because it means that you're conceding your own side as well. So, why is our side going to be good? First of all, you can implement these policies immediately. Governments can have the ability to create laws, make them binding, and do things like use law and use litigation to be able to put people out if they are doing things that are crimes against the environment. The benefit of this is that you're able to get action immediately for this kind of thing. Secondly, just note as a matter of weighing how much more beneficial our side is at a principle level. That is to say, in as much as we are able to get the benefits on our side, you have harm prevention. That is to say, people don't go through the experience of having their lives ruined in the first place. That is much more important than mitigating harms as they exist, because it means that those people still have their lives ruined to some extent, and they're simply trying to adapt to it. I think it's a matter of preference. You ought to prioritize ensuring that people don't have to go through that kind of trauma in the first place. But I think the reason as well that they're going to be effective on our side of the debate is because I think that when you're trying to deal with these kinds of global institutions, you start creating precedents for how future organizations are able to act. What this looks like is, in most circumstances, if you're able to start creating community objectives and community rights and things like that, you are able to ensure that all future kinds of organizations, whatever it looks like in 200 years or whatever, are much more likely to stay alive. Ultimately, at the end of this debate, on opening opposition, we are a lot more imaginative about what the solutions are, but we think that it is able to bring focus and effectiveness. We're very proud of the two of us.
But we think in either world, you should be risk averse, you should go efficient, you're going to need adaptation. Either way, you might as well start now. A couple of questions in this debate. First, does adaptation work? Second, does mitigation? Finally, even if they both, finally, in a world where you think both of them work a little bit, why do you think adaptation is still preferable? And then we'll talk a little bit more about why our material is helpful. First, I want to talk about why adaptation works, and why it's preferable to mitigation. Here's the problem with mitigation. The problem with mitigation is that there's always a major political obstacle. There's always major political obstacles to doing mitigation in the long term. That is to say, when they get up here and they say you're going to have massive taxes on oil, and you're going to jail people who they think are perpetuating climate change, we say these are all reasons why it's unlikely you're going to have an enduring international coalition sufficient to solve climate change. Recognize that do not grapple with the warrant that actually gave you, which is that solving climate change fundamentally suffers from a free rider problem. As soon as one country gets off the ship, as soon as one country decides, actually, I don't want to completely tank my economy, which I think is fairly reasonable, and in order to solve climate change that I don't know I would be able to successfully solve, the coalition falls apart. We say that it's impossible for one country to successfully mitigate climate change. We think that on an individual country-to-country basis, it's more preferable for them to be doing adaptation. The second argument that actually we do, which also is not adequately handled, is that it's just infeasible. That is, I think it is literally impossible to adapt to climate change to the extent that they want necessary without completely destroying your economy and ruining millions of people's lives. They tell you a couple things about why they think this is actually why adaptation is not going to be palatable. They say that ocean deacidification is also viable. Here's the problem. The ocean does not have an interest group. That is, all of the actions we're talking about on their side of the house have interest groups with substantial control over the political process. I don't think that they can just feel their way or hand wave out of the political reality, which is that the sort of solution that they envision is simply not enduring. But second, they say that you don't get this technology in the first place because MNCs and other such countries hate it. This goes the other way around. If you think that technology being withheld by certain companies is a reason why it's going to be a problem in the long term, guess what? They're also going to oppose any introduction of solar energy, any introduction of wind energy. If they want to get up and be like, oh, well, we don't care about solar and wind energy, fine, but you're literally now millions of people are going to die because suddenly they don't have power. Here's the problem with obfuscates. They say, here's the problem with obfuscates. They assume without justification that the only way to reverse the effects of climate change is by stopping emissions. But they do not grapple with action control, which is that actually a lot of these technologies that are also used for adaptation, i.e. things like geoengineering and things like the ocean deacidification, exactly works to counteract the forms of climate change they're talking about by creating feedback loops that make them less bad. I.e., the way that these things work is that they stop the effects of climate change, i.e. the ocean acidification stops the feedback loop whereby you decrease the amount of oxygen produced by plants in the ocean, which then makes everything worse. I.e., the whole point is that you want to create feedback loops which stop the effects of climate change. This works without reducing carbon emissions. You just cut it off at the source. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so on your side, everyone shows behind seawalls and hurricane shelters. What happens in 30 years as the cost of adaptation increases and as climate change gets worse?
That is a great question, and brings me to my third argument, or third point in the round. Say you actually think that mitigation and adaptation both work, or somewhat work, or work like to a fair degree in either world. Why do we still think that adaptation is preferable? On their side of the house, the mechanism which OO has proposed, like massive taxes on oil to the point where oil companies shut down, create massive economic costs, which prevents your ability to deal with climate change down the road. This exactly answers Lorenzo's POI, which is to say, if you literally cause a recession by doing all the sort of things that OO tells you to do, i.e. taxing oil to the point where they can't produce emissions, or throwing all the oil magnates in jail, you are immediately going to get sort of massive economic costs up in every single country, such that they do not have resources down the line to deal with climate change. Look, climate change is coming in either world. If you cause the kind of massive economic harm that they have on their side of the house, you cannot adapt down the road. That is, literally run out of money to build the seawalls that you are inevitably going to need, which means that everyone dies on their side of the house. Even if you mitigate climate change to some degree, you're not going to mitigate enough such that seawalls aren't necessary on their side of the house. adaptations, it won't be able to benefit the entire world. The problem is that geoengineering and other solutions of this type also solve this, which is to say, we also have spillover effects for the entire international sphere. Because if you deacidify the ocean, or you get particles into the air, it's not just the US that benefit, it's everyone, which means that that sort of unilateral action is capable of achieving wide-scale effects in a way that any sort of unilateral action on the part of climate change, on the part of adaptation, is never going to win. Look, climate change is happening either way. We know that for certain. I think in the world in which you're unsure if you're able to solve climate change on the north side of the house, you risk a push to adapt to it, or so proud of it.
Thanks, speaker, for their remarks. And the second speaker from opening opposition to close up the
They make it a wasteland and call it a clean environment. On our side, maybe some people will die, but on their side, the earth becomes inhabitable. Here's the clear comparative. Because our current climate crisis is not one of adaptation, it is one in which we are not doing enough. It is one of inaction and unfocused movements that don't have any particular cause other than the broad notion of save the earth. This is why our policy of having aggressive policies against the corporations, which Ethan has already identified as the pressure point and the issue, is the way in which inaction is solved, is the way in which we are able to reverse the effects of climate change. I think that the climate change being incredibly unfocused is the thing we're trying to solve here, and why just building shelters and just bending to corporations who are going to continually pollute anyways is not the ways in which we should be responding. Two things in the speech. First, very clear comparative way, and second, talking about the effectiveness of either side. So, on the very clear comparative way, right, OG says that what we are currently doing is ineffective, and we need extreme solutions because our situation is so dire. Let me reiterate to you what is the scientific community's consensus on our state. First of all, we are probably unlikely to go to a pre-human state of climate. But they also say that it is still within the realm of possibility that we maintain Earth as a habitable place. This is the outcome that we are looking for, the outcome that it is still possible to make Earth still habitable. So opening government saying that climate change is going to kill us all inevitably is not one that you should buy. Maybe climate change will happen and still get worse, but it's not necessarily one in which we all ought to prepare for the apocalypse. I think on OO then, the inaction which is causing these issues, we propose aggressive policies against the pressure points. Why? Because what we are doing is prevention. We want to stop these issues. What government is doing is they want harm mitigation of just bending to these corporations and trying to save as many lives along the way as possible. That is the wrong approach to this. We should be trying to prevent, right? Because what OO is providing you doesn't work. What they want is to mine iron and develop cleaner energy solutions and also like seaboards and stuff like that. The issue with this is A, it takes a lot of time, B, it takes a lot of research and development. The issue here is that there's a timeline gap, as my partner already brought to you. The timeline gap being, if we are constantly trying to adapt to these situations that are happening one by one, then these situations that happen 10 years later, we cannot accommodate for. We constantly are playing catch up with the environment that we are destroying and the lives we are trying to save. This is the issue and why the timeline gap is going to be so harmful. But also, notice the issue of what government is suggesting. Because in our world, the countries in which a lot of factories and pollution exist have factories owned by America. America owning factories in Bangladesh, India, China, all these places are increasing the pollution, and that is the pressure point. Opening government is saying then, all countries should be trying to research and develop cleaner efficient solutions and also make like hurricane shelters, right? The issue is, America is imposing their own industries and corporations, and the government wants those same poor developing nations to invest their own capital into these cleaner solutions when it is not their problem or fault in the first place as much as it is these corporations. It is the corporations we should be targeting, right? At the same time, they are probably going to get cheaper energy on the fact that they don't have enough capital to be investing in these things. They don't have the time or resources to be investing in these cleaner solutions. It is a lot less likely that these developing countries can be doing the adaptation that opening government wants. I'll take closing.
Is environmentalism fundamentally compatible with consumerism and capitalism?
Here's the thing. They are not very fact that our economic system right now supports corporations, letting them do whatever they want. That is the issue we are trying to change. I hope closing government understands that by the time this meeting. I think and here's why then our solutions are going to be particularly effective. Because, number one, Ethan has told you, it is immediate. I've told you time and time again, the issue is that we are taking inaction and very unfocused things. Let me give you a couple examples of promises of long-term plans of achieving global climate change solutions. The Kyoto Agreement, the Paris Accords, all of these were long-term promises and things we can adapt to the environment that we should ought to do. The issue is, opening government wants more of the same. They want more ideas of how we could be adapting to the world, more ideas for research and development into the future. What we are doing in opening opposition is saying, all of those promises and all of those long-term plans are horseshit. What we want right now is the ability to change policy, is the ability to change economic structures so that those corporations no longer have the ruling hand over the ways in which the environment operates. But then opening government would love to say this, that implementing this is super hard. So let me give you the comparative on this one. Opening government suggests that all of these developing nations should be opting into all this research and development. I've already told you why that's infeasible, and it requires a lot of buy-in in their side of the house, where India now has to massively invest in making a bunch of shelters for their whole population, which notably is very large. That buy-in is not likely to happen. But here's why opening opposition's buy-in doesn't actually take that much. Because literally, if we just target America, we are doing quite a lot. I just don't think opening government is allowed to just say that, oh, but no one really wants to support that. The front runner of the Dems already believes in a lot of these same policies, right? I don't think it's within the realm of question that economic structures could be modified if it is at the expense, at the expense of being able to save the planet. These policies are not impossible to implement, but at the very least, it takes a lot less buy-in on anything that government wants to propose. Then, the final issue of the government's case and why we are winning it. Because OG does nothing to challenge the current issue that exists. The capitalist structures that allow corporations to do wherever they want and whenever they want, because they're making a profit for their countries, is the issue. Opening government says that they should be allowed to continue those practices because we will just keep playing catch up and we will keep adapting to whatever atrocities they commit to climate and all of those things. What we do is directly attack the pressure point. We directly tell these capitalist societies that those corporations doing whatever they want is the pressure point. Going into other countries and making them major polluters of the world and then expecting them to figure out their own climate change solutions is the issue. We need to have aggressive policies and action right now, and those actions must be preventative, they must be mitigatory to those corporations having freedom in the ways in which they're able to pollute worldwide. So proud of those.
I make speaker remarks and invite the first speaker to close the government and then the back half.
For all rational people, it is clear, as both sides agree, that the Industrial Revolution and its consequences have had disastrous effects on the human race. But the notion that we can change hundreds of years of economic, political, and cultural domination by monopoly capitalism to be able to provide a sufficiently reparative element of ecological repair and avoid the ecological inevitable catastrophe is unrealistic and naive. The premise of our case is that environmental issues in the status quo are linked not just to the environment, but to all structures of society that impact all individuals, meaning that change on their side is structurally impossible unless you have the same amount of time that it took for these structures and norms to cement in the first place. So first, on the impossibility of change on all aspects of the Gov case. First, note that the economic structures of society are built on our continued exploitation of resources and fossil fuels, not simply because they are the cheapest, but because a significant number of political and cultural norms have been built around it. Energy supply chains, economies of scale that are built entirely on natural resources. And the exceptionally important thing to note is norms of capitalism have demonstrated to countries that it's not that these are a way of development, but they have been the inevitable way of development. The way in which academia and international organizations have told these countries that these are the only ways to go. But it's also important to note that there is significant investment in environmentally harmful policies, even though they are not viewed as environmental issues. So for instance, America protects oil supplies around the world, not just because it likes oil, but because it's a way of cementing hegemony and military imperialism. The reason America will almost never structurally abandon oil is because forcing other countries to purchase oil in dollars is a massive element of its economic hegemony. These things are not viewed as economic issues, environmental issues, but they are inherently environmental, and the fact that they're not viewed as such means that countries and companies have no incentive to change them, and any attempt to change them comes flat-faced in the view they hold that these are inevitable behaviors and inevitable. But note on a more pernicious level, on a personal and cultural level, these are how norms of what is supposed to be have happened. And it's not just corporations, it is all of us and everything involved in modern industrial society that is contributing to the ecological destruction of humanity. There's a deeply ingrained sense that the economic and societal institutions and behaviors that arose out of ecologically destructive capitalism are normal for us. So for instance, mass consumption is something that we consider to be normal. You buy new clothes every 5 years, not because they're necessary, but because they've come out of style, despite the huge ecological harms that provides. Advertising, commodification of everything, including education, culturally ingrains people to think this is the inevitable norm of society. But it's important to recognize that on a personal level, environmentally harmful things have become rationalized by norms and analyses that are completely non-environmental. That is to say, things like meat consumption are tied with notions of luxury, of excess, of masculinity that have nothing to do with an ecological analysis, meaning that the ability to convince people that eating a steak on the 4th of July contributes to the annihilation of the planet comes in the face of people's ingrained beliefs in what they believe their normal behavior is. Cars will destroy and are destroying the planet. People buy them because of an inherently cultural sense of personal freedom and luxury. It's why people consider the ecologically better option of public transit to be associated with dirt and poor people, meaning that your capacity to convince people to view these things through an environmental analysis comes in the face of ideological hegemony. Finally, there's just the way individuals view things. That is to say, that you get a lot of benefit as an individual, but you don't see the harm until the hurricane's flying at you, meaning that there's always a skewed analysis. What is the burden of government? The government has to convince people that every aspect of their life that people consider to be normal are in fact, have to convince people to analyze those things through an environmental lens. But not only through an environmental lens, but to convince people that the environmental analysis that they see on every aspect of their life is worth the sacrifices they would have to make, which is impossible given hundreds of years of ideological change. And it's important to note that this ideological and cultural hegemony manifests itself not just in countries that have already developed and have consumer cultures, but the fact that these countries dominate the international economic and political system means that all countries that are on the path of development are socialized to believe that this is the inevitable end goal of development. That is to say, there's a reason why beef consumption and iPhone use in China has gone exponentially over the last couple of years, because the ultimate end goal that people believe of development is to be consumption. Meaning that the capacity to convince people that the end goal of what you've been consuming for 30, 40, 50 years is actually not something you should do is impossible. The best case, therefore, is you only focus on issues that people currently view as environmental as opposed to economic or cultural. Meaning that the best case on their side is a perceptually green version of ecological collapse that still leads us down the inevitable path of destruction. Why is adaptation better? Given the narrow time frame versus the narrow time frame of our death versus the large time frame it will take to tell people that consumerism is not worth pursuing, it means that we allow ourselves in the essential time we have until our extinction to live to some extent in peace and comfort to a much better way than they would by building societal structures that do otherwise. Okay.
So yeah, banning cars or wanting to radically end the consumer culture are movements that already exist, and also probably more possibly our side of the debate than just trying to say that we should maybe limit that some capacity to working within the framework of personal preferences, right? You can take stances against those very things. You guys just have to set a lot of courses that do exist.
First, good luck banning cars. I'm not saying we're good at banning cars. I'm saying we will never ban cars, and therefore pretending that we can, or pretending that you have like a environmentally, like friendly radio on your car is the solution to this bullshit. But secondly, adaptation is the only measure on both sides that is inherently reparative. That is to say, decades, if not centuries, of harms and pollutions mean millions, tens of millions, even hundreds of millions of people who already live with permanent ecological damage that is irreversible regardless of whatever case health has. Means that relocation, reconstruction, adaptation for these individuals is the only way in which we have some sort of reparative element for anti-climate things. Okay. Also, last case, like worst case, worst case. So, weighing on the worst case. Unless Gov can prove that they get a full-scale ecological revolution where all of society's structures and institutions that upends hundreds of years of dominance in the current system, none of their policies will do anything. On our side, the worst case is extinction, but we can extend human life for as long as possible and as comfortably as possible, even if the end result on both sides is our annihilation. We're coming back to
myths in this debate. The first is that the scientific consensus should matter in the adjudication of this round, and the second is CEO's crazy extension that the current paradigm is such that we can never, ever stop climate change. On the first thing about the scientific consensus, what we'll be showing you is why, independent of the science, prevention and mitigation is simply a better strategy. It is better for developing countries, and it's more economically self-sustaining, while adaptation will bankrupt people indefinitely and forever, as OG builds their 10,000 feet seawalls and domes to prevent the tsunamis from killing us. OO tells you about how rich companies won't sell technology to poor countries. But we're going to show you how this issue in this round is not a lack of finances, rather it's something much more specific. It is the fact that for adaptation to be effective, it can be exclusively implemented on a local scale, and rich countries can simply do it for themselves without much care for what happens to developing countries. On the other hand, for mitigation to be effective, the whole world must do it together, creating a system in which incentives are aligned between wealthier nations to help poorer nations deal with climate change. So that'll be a point of extension. But before that, let's do a little rebuttal. So, General says that the Industrial Revolution has led to a situation where we're addicted to oil and coal. First of all, CEO didn't really show us why we have a need for coal and oil specifically, only that we have a need for energy. And if we can show you how green energy is coming to fill the need and the gap of energy, which we see that it is in many countries with solar and wind taking over coal production, then we win and defeat the extension. Second of all, they talk about hegemonies and oil empires. I think they got the causality wrong. The US doesn't prop up oil empires because it just likes oil for the sake of it. It props up oil empires because it needs oil. But if it stops needing oil because it starts using solar and wind, it will no longer need to prop up this destructive system of hegemony that they couch most of their case on. They also talk about cultures like steak on 4th of July, right? I'm sorry, but if all of the economic analysis I'm about to give you about why green technology is beneficial for countries is just simply met with your argument that people like steak, I think you're going to have to do better than that. Also, many people can change their cultural norms, like coming to like Beyond Beef burgers on 4th of July more than steak. I mean, maybe China will never stop eating beef, but if we show you that manufacturing production and the bulk of carbon emissions are reduced, I think that their cultural point just becomes trivial and irrelevant in this debate. Finally, they talk about how countries are socialized to see coal production as big and noble because coal is masculine and representative of the Industrial Revolution. I don't think that this is true anymore. Developing countries like China and India are leading this green revolution. They're the biggest investors in solar and wind. China has agreed to peak coal production in 2030 and is heavily investing in solar energy research. The big reason for this is because I think Chinese people care more about their kids not getting asthma from pollution and their children having a place to live that's unswept away by tsunamis than they care about their love for masculine coal and the myth of the Industrial Revolution. CEO's extension is trivial and therefore does not matter in this round. Okay, let's talk about our extension. I think you'll also find that a bulk of my argument will serve as rebuttal to that claim that green technology is not economically viable. Okay, our first point of extension is about how adaptation perennially will harm lower income and developing countries. OG says this issue of the round is that of political will. The issue is not necessary system to develop to help the least well off. The crux of our argument is that focusing on adaptation creates a system where developed countries no longer have incentives to help developing countries stop climate change. It creates a silo effect. Why is that the case? Because adaptation is excludable. What this means is that there's no personal gain to sharing adaptation technologies with other countries. If I build a seawall for myself, that already protects me. I don't need to share it with Côte d'Ivoire for me to reap the benefits of it. On the other hand, in mitigation, there is extensive personal gain to be reaped by sharing the technology that you have and ensuring that other countries can also access the mitigation technologies. In fact, for mitigation technology to even be effective, we say that you have to necessarily help other people because the environmental impacts of rising sea levels, of like global temperatures rising, is not something that's localized, but something that's global. So you have to take a global solution. All pointed out this fact, but we mechanize it to show you how this fact changes the entire system of decision making and self-interest that operates in the international community to solve climate change. Now, what does this look like on our side then? It looks like developed countries forking out money to pay developing countries to meet their carbon reduction targets. Norway has done this to Indonesia to help them ensure that they'll meet their carbon emissions reductions. Why will they do it, however? First of all, it is only by helping developing countries that Norway's own mitigation strategies will be effective. Otherwise, it's really useless because then they're only reducing like maybe the 3% of emissions that they themselves emit, but they don't reduce the bigger problem of climate change that will affect everyone altogether. And second of all, if they want to solve it, only developing countries can do this. This is critical because this is the link as to why their side is one in which you silo solutions to climate change within the wealthier nations will never share technology with developing countries. So even though they might get seawalls in Europe, you never get that in the bulk of the world, and because that's where most people experience the worst harms of climate change. That's a really terrible thing. Yes, okay.
So even if you share solar panels, no one wants them. On our side of the house, you might be right about seawalls, but most geoengineering technology and adaptation technologies have spillovers. If the US wants to de-acidify the ocean, they have to de-acidify the entire ocean, which helps every country, not just themselves.
Okay, first thing, why would people want solar panels, right? It's a really cheap way of producing energy, and it's like zero marginal cost. Second of all, the spillover effects of stopping climate change through prevention strategies seems to be much larger than this strange fantasy of putting iron in the ocean to reduce acidic sea levels. And if anything, that effect is symmetrical. Explaining a little bit more, I also want to say that the specific impacts of climate change that are faced by poorer countries are problems that are not often faced by the wealthiest countries. Poorer nations are more likely to be island nations, tropical nations, or drought-ridden nations, and therefore the kind of adaptation strategies you need to solve those problems are very distinct from the adaptation strategies you need in resource-plenty Europe and resource-plenty America. Therefore, to mechanize all those big claims about corporations simply never develop the adaptation solutions that developing drought-ridden countries need to solve those problems. I also want to point out that a lot of the adaptation strategies look like building very simple infrastructure that most of the developed world already has. For instance, roads to transport food in times of famine, and air conditioning to prevent heat stroke. Therefore, there's no incentive on their side for developed nations to continue developing adaptation strategies. On the other hand, the developing world will never develop these. Alright, let's move on to a second point of extension. Why prevention is not only possible, but economically beneficial. And this starts as rebuttal to CO. First of all, carbon-based production is getting increasingly expensive and impossible. Extracting oil from the bottom of the well and extracting the last reserves of coal that exist are much more expensive than extracting the first reserves. So it's exponentially more expensive for investors. The less supply, the prices also increase. And that's why even companies like Exxon are realizing they need to move away from coal because it's no longer viable. On the other hand, the price of green energy is substantially cheaper because there's zero marginal cost to absorbing the sun or the wind. It's also economically more stable because it's recession-proof and war-proof in the sense that you do not need to have like the cartels that control oil to access solar energy if you're a poor village in a rural area. For all of these reasons, we're very proud to work with.
Second speaker proposed government proposed state 13 and the government adaptation.
Is everyone ready? Panel, I think the framing for this debate is one that is quite important, particularly in terms of how we think of opening opposition in debate in terms of the motion is one that is largely about the allocation of resources. That is to say, from a top-down, what should we invest our resources in terms of the outcomes we seek to yield. I think that closing opposition is more reasonable about this when it comes to investing in things like technology. But no, the ult we get from opening opposition is one in which we will somehow change the entire economic structure of the world away from capitalism because they agree with Jim's POI that environmentalism is fundamentally incompatible with existing economic structures, and it's completely ridiculous that somehow through lobbying in terms of resource allocation, you are going to fundamentally change the world away from capitalism in the next couple of years, unless the resources that they control are like the human capital inside the minds of every single voter. This is fundamentally ridiculous. But second, in terms of framing, and this is incredibly important, is that there is incredible urgency that exists in this debate. That is to say that the impacts of climate change are not just you emit CO2 now, and that CO2 now has an effect now, and if you stop emitting CO2, the effects stop. Rather, the effects compound over time. That is to say that the CO2 that has existed or been emitted over the last 300 years as a result of the Industrial Revolution stays in the atmosphere, continues to have effects in the atmosphere while it roams around the atmosphere and degrade the ozone layer. That is to say that the emissions that continue to happen over the next few years will have impacts over hundreds of years, will continue to degrade the ozone layer, creating damage that is irreparable. That means even if we are eventually to reach a point where we stop emitting things like methane and CO2, that the damage will still be there, and we will still see the ramifications in terms of the outcomes and impacts for hundreds of years down the road. This is likely to damn humanity. It means in order for opposition bench to actually have any kind of solvency on their side of the house, they need to show you why they can't just over time ratchet down the amount of emissions we get so that eventually we're going to have really low emissions. They need to show you that we need to be able to, so they can successfully get rid of emissions in such a way that is immediate enough that we don't reach this very nearing tipping point. I don't think they do so, and that's because of what Jinbo tells you. Because this is incredibly important, right? The response we get from closing opposition is like, oh, but things will just change fast because people can change their cultural norms and the US can just move to renewable energy because it has the incentive to. They don't deal with these structural incentives that Jinbo talks to you about, i.e., a lot of environmental issues are incredibly built into the economic structures that exist in terms of the mass consumer culture that has been constructed economically from the top down over generations and the cultural expectations people have. That is to say that sure, social movements like the ones that OO talk about over time will probably convince people that they should start reducing their consumption. I buy that the social movements that exist at my college have maybe gotten me to reduce my consumption little by little, year over year. But I don't think this is going to have the kind of immediate impact that they need to accessing a solvency. I just don't think you can fundamentally get someone to completely renege on all of their cultural expectations of what they should be able and to do within an immediate time frame. But second, on things like oil and energy, they tell you that green technology is more effective, so governments will be happy, companies will be happy to use it. First, if that's the case, then why do a lot of governments and companies still use non-renewable energies? A few reasons. One, the US will always have the structural incentive to push oil because they benefit from the fact that it maintains their hegemony because they necessarily have oil be sold on the petrodollar. It means it increases the importance of the dollar in the global landscape. But second, things like we think their side is one that's probably just likely to slowly ratchet down their emissions over time by just turning to the next most palatable thing because it's really hard to convince people to just completely change their culture in one immediate move. We think they're likely to start turning to things like natural gas that the US can claim is really relatively more environmentally effective, and the US has every incentive to push incredibly intensely because the US has a lot of the natural gas reserves, right? That the US benefits as an exporter of it. We still think natural gas is incredibly dangerous because it's really high in methane. Methane has really bad effects on destroying the ozone layer. The case we get from closing opposition is that adaptation is exclusive and technology is not, so therefore their sides comparatively get better. But look, if they don't solve fast enough for climate change, everyone's still damned on their side of the house. So even if you get this morally nice kumbaya, it doesn't mean they change anything. But second, recognize countries aren't actually guaranteed to share technology on their side of the house because of things like economic competition between companies and between nations, because of things like patents, etc. Third, if this was true, that China, which Steele said was an environmental leader would be giving green technology for free around the world, which they aren't currently doing so. Maybe they will slowly start doing it slightly more and more, decade after decade, but they're not going to get the immediate change that they need on their side of the house to actually avoid the tipping point. Fourth, even if everything they say is true, based on the notion that climate collapse is only based on technology, or like, I'll take the appeal thing.
So, both sides have issues with effectiveness potentially. However, on our side, we're still able to pass laws that radically alter the amount of emissions that come out and change incentives, which saves millions of lives. On your side, you might kill billions of fish and have no impact whatsoever, and the air is still toxic. How can that aware?
I don't think what you're saying is true. I think you can't immediately get the kind of policies that can actually stop climate change anytime soon. I think you can slowly ratchet up your policies to slowly, over time, reduce emissions more by more over time, because it's really hard to get people to fundamentally change everything about their lives in one go. I think when climate change ends up happening and you pass that tipping point, I think the effects are ones that are likely to damn billions of people. I think when the ozone layer gets destroyed and the temperatures in the ocean all around the world dramatically rise, I think this is something that can potentially damn all of humanity. What is he comparing with? Even if closing opposition is right and adaptation is something that is excludable, we still think, given that climate change is probably going to happen in either world, given that horrendous impacts are probably going to happen, at least our side is one that has a chance to help people survive it. That is to say that governments can still do everything they can to deal with the particular impacts that are happening now and will continue to happen for the next hundreds of years, just because of already existing emissions, to do whatever they can to stop people from being harmed by those impacts. We think that means that when the ocean level, for example, starts rising heavily, that the government can at least save people from the effects of drowning in floods. We think that if climate change will reach the point where it dams all of humanity, which is still is likely to do, that we at least have the chance to find resources off-world, do whatever we can to deal with this. Our side is one that at least lets you deal with the inevitability of climate change. Theirs has nothing to deal with it.
Their team, their bench, and round of applause. You're here.
First, we don't care about the diversity of species of birds or fish. Secondly, important question, what happens on their side when mitigation happens? Everyone is fine, you have the mitigation, and then things get worse and worse and they get no solvency. Basically, the idea we get is everyone's fucked, so we might as well benefit a few people even if everybody else dies. A few problems with this. First, everybody else gets worse off when the most privileged are able to protect themselves, such that there is a moral hazard problem where you have less of an incentive to help out the rest of the world. This is kind of what Colin tells you. Why the reason this is important is because the vast majority of A, the most vulnerable people in the world, but two, just a bigger number of people in terms of quantity, are the people who don't have the access to the types of great technologies that they need in order to be saved. This is because the particular geographic characteristics of developing countries. What technologies have they mentioned that can help stop the massive floods, the massive droughts, for instance, in Central Africa, or the massive flooding in Southeast Asia? I don't think that they've shown that there is sufficient technology to actually help alleviate these problems. But furthermore, I think that they are making a fallacy when they assume that the effects of climate change are binary. They aren't binary. They get worse the least political capital we get to solve these problems. So even if we don't completely solve it, the fact that we reduce carbon emissions in a substantial way, which I will show later, does have effects that we should care about. So, a few more things to talk about here. We get this thing from the previous speaker saying, oh, we kind of contradict opening opposition. because they said consumerism and environmentalism are incompatible. Now we're saying economic structures can solve for this. Here's why we are compatible with what Bobo said. It's quite simple. Like they said, like the previous speaker said in the response, they were referring to in the status quo, is consumerism and environmentalism compatible? I think what Colin says is, going toward the future, we have a reason to believe that changing technology and changing political incentives sort of expands the curve of possibilities such that we are able to make these two compatible. I'll show how that happens in a bit. Secondly, I think Colin also gives you really good responses about how we can have changing habits that are maybe more important than all these fancy words about long-established cultural norms. Because maybe what starts happening in a few years is that people look at this as a decision between very basic things like access to health or access to life for their children, and therefore this simply outweighs the importance of the cultural norms that they are talking about. Lastly, I think it is important to mention a good thing, which is, I think, why we place over the opening opposition. Because they say we want to do more things that are currently being done in the status quo. But like the previous speaker points out, they don't have fiat power over how much political capital they have in the ground. But we give the explanations as to why we have increased political capital and why we have increased economic capacity to make these changes because of changes in technology and so on and so forth. So what are these changes? What are we talking about specifically? This is a response to all this stuff about mass consumption, commodification, all of these economic structures that apparently we cannot change. So the reason that we bring about these changes is twofold. Firstly, because the cost of extracting oil is increasingly getting more expensive. The majority of major oil polluters have already reached peak oil, which means that for every extra oil that is extracted, it's getting more expensive. But on the contrary, the majority of countries in the world have been investing hugely in green technology, including oil companies, because they see that in the future it is going to overtake oil as a cheaper alternative. But there's a second reason countries want other sources of energy, which is that oil happens to be concentrated in few countries in the world, and in some pretty problematic regions of the world, shall I say. Therefore, there is sort of an incentive to have energy independence such that shocks in the price of oil don't affect you. There's also questions of who controls the oil supply. They say, the US takes over the oil for $1 Sounds like an incentive for every other country in the world to not have to depend on US-controlled oil or oil controlled by another one of their enemies. So there are also geopolitical reasons why people want to transfer away from oil products. But what the previous speaker said is, CO2 stays in the atmosphere, so even if you reduce emissions, we're still screwed because it's all up there doing global warming. The problem with this is that first, technology of carbon absorption, getting a lot of progress, but secondly, we have things that absorb carbon from the atmosphere, like plankton, the Amazon rainforest. It's pretty cool. We can also plant more trees. These are the things that governments are doing. So what this suggests is twofold. One, we can increase the rate of carbon absorption, but two, if we decrease the rate of pollution, then the rate of absorption might naturally surpass it in a way that we do lead to preferable outcomes. And I just don't believe that the status quo, or even a world a little bit worse than the status quo with regards to climate change, is something so bad that we should just give up and start adapting instead. Because the vast majority of people in the world still haven't changed their lifestyles in a way that is, substantially bad, such that we should just give up on them anyway. I'll take over.
By the time there are sufficiently bad impacts of climate change in rich countries such that they are compelled to act, the effects of climate change are near irreversible. Why do you prefer a small chance at manipulating facts that helps everyone over the certainty of saving millions who are already dying from climate change?
Well, okay, so I think the response to that comes from what I was going to talk about right now, which is the collective action problem. I think that rich countries, if what you're saying is true, that they feel the effects of climate change after developing countries, then the majority of the world is going to be screwed anyway. I think we have a reason to think we can help them because of everything that I just said. But the comparative on your side is a few things that closing opposition or closing government has just failed to refute from our case. Which is, for instance, any degree of capital invested in prevention has externalities for developing countries. Because if the US or China reduces carbon pollution, then every other country in the world experiences less climate change. Because there is a problem, that there is a characteristic of this problem, such that under our side of the house, what are they saying? You have an incentive to share your technology with other countries, because that way the effect of your mitigation and your prevention becomes more effective around the world. So I think by virtue of the inequalities that exist around the world, it is in fact likely that your side is just one in which a few people in some major cities around the world are able to be better off. But also, if they cannot solve the rate of climate change, then the people in those countries are also going to experience very terrible effects. So So if we take the, screw it, let's just have fun attitude of CEO, it seems a reason to not do anything about climate change and just give up entirely. I don't think that spending money mitigating is actually going to improve the quality of life of these people instead of just like buying lots of champagne or something. I don't know. Okay, lastly, I think that a lot of the arguments coming from clothing about culture and things like this just miss the point. Because I don't see why culture is about the sources from which something comes from. That's to say, if a consumer good is produced with oil as opposed to green technology, I don't think the fact that it was produced with another source of energy changes my culture with regards to my consumption of it. But secondly, I just don't see why they have shown that cultural norms, just like they shifted from the agricultural revolution in the industrial revolution, cannot also shift from today to a more green tomorrow. And for all those reasons, our change is feasible. We are proud to defend it.